All right, going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Do I have a motion to move to close meeting? Executives?
I second close.
Okay, we have a motion. I have
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to move into executive session. We'll be back shortly. All right, we're going to go ahead and reconvene the meeting. But before we do, today is September 11th, and it's the anniversary of the planes crashing in the Twin Towers. And I want to see if we can have a moment of silence before we can reconvene the meeting. Amen. All right, John, item number 1.
No action in executive session. General Manager's report, we've got the financial report. Leandro?
Good evening. Chairman, members of the board, Mayor. My name is Mike Pettis. I'm the accounting manager for the Brownsville PUB, and I will be presenting the financial statements of the PUB for the month of July 2006.
Stay there. It's okay.
On page 2, we have the adjusted gross revenue summary presenting the monthly and year-to-date gross revenues. The net operating revenues for the month of July 2006 were $16,549,372, and the year-to-date gross net operating revenues were $152,310,253. After adding the other revenues, interest on investments, and other non-operating income, the gross revenues for July 2006 were $17,393,154, and the year-to-date gross revenues were $159,967,620. Once fuel and energy costs, wholesale energy expenses, and southmost expenses are deducted, the adjusted gross revenues for July 2006 were $10,247,716, and the year-to-date adjusted gross revenues were $83,635,916. On page 3, we have a summary of Brownsville PUB's obligations. The O&M expenses and other non-operating expenses for the month of July were $3,358,285, and the year-to-date total expenses were $34,433,469. After adding in the debt service obligations, the total requirements for July 2006 were $5,269,781, and the year-to-date requirements were $53,997,738. By reducing these obligations from the adjusted gross revenues, and after reducing the City of Brownsville usage, the total available balance to surplus for the month of July 2006 was $4,564,019, and the year-to-date balance available to surplus was $25,716,924. The city's and PUB share of the surplus was $4,442,337 and $21,274,587 respectively. On page 4, we have the Brownsville PUB surplus summary. As you all recall, the ordinance requires reserve accounts. Therefore, on a monthly basis, the PUB is transferring funds to meet these reserves. The year-to-date allocations were $21,274,587. In the month of July 2006, PUB has allocated approximately $4 million towards these reserves. The remaining items in this presentation are summary graphs comparing last year's year-to-date actual, this year's budget, and this year's year-to-date actual. The 2006 actual net operating revenues of $152.3 million exceeded the budgeted amounts by $24.8 million, a 90% change, and $36.6 million from last year's actual. This is a 32% increase. The 2006 gross revenues of $160 million exceeded budget by $27.1 million, a 20% change, and $39 million from last year's actual, a 32% increase. Now, the year-to-date gross revenues of 83.6 million, after reducing the fuel energy, wholesale energy, and southmost expenses, exceeded budget by 5.2 million and 15.1 million over last year's actual. On page 6, the fuel and energy year-to-date expenses exceeded budget by 9 million and 18% change, and year-to-date expenses also exceeded last year's actual by 13.5 million and 30% change. The O&M year-to-date expenses of 31.6 million were under the budgeted amount by 1.1 million. This represents a 3% favorable variance. The year-to-date actual expenses were also under last year's actual by 1.5 million. On page 7, reports that the year-to-date surplus available of 25.7 million has exceeded the budget by 5.5 million, a 27% change, and exceeded last year's actual by 13 million. This is a 102% increase. The surplus available to PUB represented 21.3 million, which exceeds budget and prior year's actual. The surplus available to the city of 4.4 million was actually below the budgeted amount by $200,000. The primary factor for the decrease is the increased fuel and energy costs. The city's usage year-to-date has exceeded the budgeted usage and last year's actual usage, and thus contributing to a smaller cash transfer.
Mayor, you need a conservation plan.
On the graph on page 8 represents the utility contribution balances to the surplus fund. Electric contributed 18.9 million to the surplus, which was over the budget amount by 4.67 million and 33% change. Water contributed 2.5 million to the surplus, a decrease of 40,000 from the budgeted amount, and wastewater contributed 4.37 million to the surplus, an $850,000 increase over the budget. Overall, the percentage contributions to surplus by electric, water, and wastewater were 73.5%, 9.5%, and 17% respectively. The graph on page 9 summarizes the electrical monthly consumption. July consumption was 121.2 million kilowatt hours. This is an 11.1 million kilowatt hour increase from the month of June, a 10.1% increase. Current month consumption is also 2.8 million kilowatt hour under last year's July consumption. The graph on page 10 reports the water consumption. For the month of July 2006, the water consumption decreased approximately 4.3 million gallons from last month consumption, a 1% decrease. The July 2006 water consumption also represents a decrease from last year's of 88.6 million gallons. The graph on page 11 reports the wastewater flows. For the month of July 2006, wastewater flows increased approximately 4.9 million gallons from last month, a 1.2% increase. The July 2006 wastewater flows represent a decrease from last year of 26 million gallons. The last slide on page 12 provides a status of the year-to-date capital expenditures by utility and funding sources. As of July 2006, the actual capital expenditures were 11.2 million, of which the majority of 7 million was in the improvement fund. Another 12.1 million has been encumbered by either POs or invoices for existing or new projects, bringing the total year-to-date capital expenditures to 23.3 million. This represents 57.7% of the 40.4 million approved capital spending plan. This concludes the financial presentation for the month of July 2006. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. Anything else on the agenda, man? We'll move on to item number 3. Consideration and approval of Brownsville PUB's fiscal year 2007 operation and maintenance budget. Leandro Garcia.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we've had completed 3 workshops on the budget. We'll try to presentation format that you've seen in the workshops. And we have broken the budget up into three parts this year. We're going to look at the impact of these situations.
Mr. Chairman and Mayor, members of the board, my name is Yandro Garcia. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Brownsville PUB Utilities Board. This presentation will cover all of the components, the financial resources and expenses for PUB, including the O&M and the CIP. But as John mentioned, at the end we'll touch on the three agenda items that we're seeking authorization on. The presentation outline here, I'll cover briefly budget objectives, goals, our sources and uses of funds, provide a summary of revenues and expenses, some things we're including in the maintenance pool account, talk about the Southmost budget, which was approved on August 28th, go over the top level CIP spending plan that we're proposing, and then go over the three agenda items for your consideration. Budget objectives for 2006 and 2007 fiscal year are to continue to meet basic operational requirements, meet and exceed debt service coverage requirements, meet and or exceed operating and improvement reserve requirements, and continue our pay-as-you-go CIP funding. A few of the goals that we set out for 2006 and 2007, we are proposing a no rate increase. We're continuing to utilize some coverage dollars, some surplus dollars, to continue funding a fuel sub-account that'll help mitigate fuel and purchase energy charge increases. We're providing for an adjustment to O&M employee count as recommended by R.W. Beck in their management assessment study. Our recommendation here is to add 5 new O&M positions, bringing the count up from 462 to 467. We're asking authorization to establish a 5-person crew, construction crew, to be funded 100% with CIP funds. We're requesting authorization for a merit pay program for employees at 3.5% of gross salary requirements. We're also requesting to implement a subsequent phase of the Watson-Y market study adjustment recommendations, which call for increases in pay grades for selected positions. Continue funding for the pool maintenance account, and we've also included $250,000 for conservation initiatives, which we'll be working with the board in future meetings and identifying strategies and programs to fund from these funds. Funding sources for our proposed budget, which totals $191,489,991. Our sources, starting from the top right, include electric sales and services revenues of $144,271,027. This comprises of three revenue sources. Base revenues from our base rates, totaling approximately $53.8 million. Our fuel revenues, based on the fuel factor and fuel use projections, is $68.5 million. And then our off-system sales, we're projecting $22.2 million, totaling to that $144 million electric sales and services. On the water side, we're projecting revenues of $19,309,979. Wastewater, estimated at $19,955,985. We do have provisions for other revenues, which include other sales, penalties, connection charges, totaling $4.7 million. And with our continued maintenance of healthy balances in several funds and interest rates going up, we're projecting an interest revenue stream of $3.2 million. On the uses side, on the requirements side, to maintain a balanced budget, you're looking here at a pie that with a total of $191,489,991 equates the sources. I'll begin at the right here, going clockwise. Electric, fuel, and energy cost. We're projecting that at $86,734,722. This includes both our base load fuel requirements of $68.5 million and fuel requirements for off-system sales of $18.2 million. The Southmost Regional Water Authority's budget, or our contribution to that budget, totals $4,061,546. Two components to that, our O&M contribution of $2.1 million and our debt service requirement of $1.8 million. This Southmost budget was approved, as mentioned, on August 28th by the Southmost Board. We have two components that make up our general O&M, our personnel and non-personnel pieces. Our personnel O&M for 2007 is projected at $22,687,912, or 12% of the total uses. Non-personnel totals to $19,914,296, or 10% of the total requirements. With the good financial position the PUB's in, we are projecting some supplemental components to our budget for 07. Four supplements for your consideration. The first one, we're requesting a $532,707 supplement for merit pay. This is, we're budgeting 3.5% based on general wages to be distributed based on performance, effective January 1st, 2007. Our second supplement, our maintenance pool account, we're estimating $1,520,000 in this group. This is a strategy that has served us well. In 2006, we budgeted $1.9 million, and during the course of the year, we've been able to address on a timely manner maintenance requirements that as a result of malfunctioning equipment or immediate repairs that are needed at various type of equipment. So we're wanting to continue this, or we're asking your authorization to continue with this pool to address emergency needs during the course of the year. Our third supplement calls for $250,000 in funding for implementing the market study adjustment that addressed undervalued positions. So we would be upgrading some of these positions based on market comparability with the $250,000. Our fourth O&M calls for 5 new positions, totaling $173,254. These 5 positions would be situated with our water and wastewater treatment plants. R.W. Beck recommended to alleviate the potential risk of a mishap at the plant, since they're currently manned by one person, is to have some type of dual coverage during the night for quick response in emergencies. So hopefully these 5 positions will be arranged with shifts that can respond to any emergency needs at the plant. We have other non-operating expenses at $2.6 million, which are being budgeted. These are normally financing costs, amortization costs, corporate level type expenses. Our debt service requirement for 2007 is $24,098,918, or 13% of the budget. This includes existing debt service and commercial paper and a little bit of new debt service for if we do get into a need for issuing new debt for some of the projects on the list for CIP. On the city cash transfer, that we're projecting a net transfer of $5,731,322. This is calculated after reducing the city transfer of $10,069,000 by COB usage of $4.3 million. We also, as I mentioned, are continuing with some of the reserves we've established in 06. The operating and improvement reserves, total request of $8,055,000, includes funding for continuing our operating reserve fund with an additional $1 million. Our fuel sub-account to mitigate fuel and purchase energy costs by $4 million. Our improvement reserve fund, $3 million, and then a little bit as our last bucket, a surplus of $55,000. We're also dedicating $15,130,000 to fund CIP requirements, primarily in the electric side. This next couple of slides break down the revenues and requirements as compared to the amended budget for the current year, as well as the current year estimates through September 30th, and provides the variances between both fiscal years. On the first line, the operating revenues, we're going from a budgeted amount for 06 of $149 million to $161 million. It just happens that we are estimated through the end of the year for this current year, $161 million as well. A $12 million increase. $12 million primarily is attributed to base rate revenue increases of $4.2 million. To project our revenues for all three utilities, electric, water, and sewer, we're using a 3.5% growth factor. In addition, we have a $7.7 million increase of fuel requirements, combined totaling to $12 million as a variance to the approved budget, to the amended budget. On the next line, the all-system sales, we budgeted currently for this year $2.1 million. We're projecting $21.3 million in revenues from sales to the utilities. And for 2007, we're projecting $22.1 million. A variance of $20 million between the amended budget and the proposed budget for 2007. Adding in other revenues, we end up with gross revenues of $191 million, or $33 million more than the amended budget of $157 million. When we back out the fuel all-system sales expense and southmost, we're left with an adjusted gross revenues net of $100 million, $693, as compared to the $92 million amended for 06, an $8.6 million revenues. Just for information here on the all-system sales, we are generally experiencing an 18%, 22% gross margin. So we're hoping to make $4 million off the 22 million all-system sales by spending.
Let me stop you there. On the all-system sales revenues and the all-system sales expenses, we've always had smaller numbers in the past, right?
Yes, sir.
Even though the numbers have been, why this year are we going to go ahead and go with a larger number?
We're proceeding with larger numbers because they're realistic, and that's how we propose the budget. Based on current year.
We told them that we didn't want them coming back with a bunch of amendments. But let me make that very clear and very clean.
In addition, what's helping us with a margin of $4 million, we're dedicating that, or we're requesting the board to consider using that $4 million margin as our sub-account for fuel and purchase energy mitigation. That is not a must for operating needs. That's a reserve that we can tap during the course of the year to offset the fuel and purchase energy charge. So we're not obligating the monies to support.
It's just there if we need it.
It's there if we need it. If we don't realize 22 million, then we can live with that. We can make adjustments accordingly. If we were to dedicate that margin to operating requirements, then we'd have to look at that a little closer during the course of the year, and definitely it's a risk because it's subject to market conditions, our ability.
You don't want to be playing a shell game where you're shuffling money either.
Exactly.
You're being practical and realistic as to what could be needed.
Correct. It's a conservative approach. If we don't run the plants, we don't sell, and we can offset or adjust the where the money's earmarked to. What's it going to support? This next page covers on the expense side, the major components of the requirements, including our personnel. Our total O&M of $45,078,000, which includes the personnel, non-personnel, and then the supplements that I mentioned already. We are seeing here a variance of $4.8 million, going from $40 million to $45, and I can explain that in a little bit. The net revenues, $53 million. Here again, it's a $4.1 million variance over the $48 million amended budget. Our debt service is going up slightly from 23 million to 24 million. The balance available after debt service, we're projecting 28.9 million compared to 25 million this year. And we are utilizing those funds, what we call coverage dollars, to earmark them to pay for the city cash transfer and PUB reserves. On this slide here, this shows how we utilize the projected 23 million coverage dollars that are available to PUB. Here again, 1 million to the operating reserve fund. We established this fund in August of 2005 with 12.5 million. We're contributing $1 million this year, and with the next $1 million next year, will be coming in future years. Next year, with a similar plan to eventually perhaps increase it to 18 million or 3 months worth of operating needs. The 12.5 million established last August was to satisfy at least 60 days or 2
When I
months.
started this, one of my concerns was, what's going to be the criteria to allow us to tap into that fund? I don't want someone to come after us and say, we got money to spend it,
That's very well spelled out in the bond covenants for emergency needs to mitigate certain crisis situations. So we would come back to the board and establish satisfying that criteria before we would commence utilizing. And then there's a language in there on how to replenish it as well. So
And I want to commend you for putting this plan together.
okay. Our operating sub-account fuel adjustment, the 4 million here, this is a discretionary and a good strategy on PUB's part to do some forward thinking, and in case the market gets out of hand with the fuel purchases, to have a backup plan to mitigate the fuel purchases and energy charge. We will end up 2006 with 4 million in the fund already, so that can come into use in 07, and then the 4 million budgeted for 07 can be come into play in 2008, fiscal year 2008, if we so desire. We're currently mitigating the fuel personality charge this summer with 2005 surplus funds, and that has allowed us to stabilize that fuel factor during the summer months.
Once we build up the reserves to where it's worth going back to the bond rating agency and asking them to take a look at our financial condition, our rating should improve and save us some money.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm already scheduling conference calls in late October once we have a good year-end picture of our finances, and with the budget as it's being proposed, if it's approved. Definitely, the liquidity position and the strong financial position will definitely put us in path for consideration of rating increases. Maybe not, in the immediate future, but in a year or two. But this is definitely a good strategy to get us.
Compared to where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, we've come a long ways.
Yes, we have. The next line is scheduled CIP funding of 15.1 million, primarily, like I mentioned earlier, electric, and this continues our pay-as-you-go strategy. We're putting in $3 million for the second year contribution to the $15 million requirement for the Improvement Reserve Fund, and then we have a residual amount of $55,000, making a total of $23 million in surplus funding, or coverage dollars really, from covering debt service available to PUB. Our budget has been prepared to provide a self-sustaining or self-sufficient budget for each utility, electric, water, and sewer at a minimum of 1.5 times coverage. We are obligated to provide for 1.25 times coverage on debt for senior lien debt, 1.1 for our junior lien. As I mentioned, we budget 1.5, and combined, we're achieving a 2.2 times coverage ratio. These next few slides provide the breakdown between water, electric, water, and wastewater. Net operating, the bulk of the revenues, the majority is electric at $144 million versus 19 and 19 for water and wastewater. Gross revenues, 149, 20, and 21 respectively. Net revenues after backing out O&M, the supplements being requested, 39 million for electric, 5.4 million for water, and 8.5 million for wastewater. Debt service requirements by utility, 15.9 million for electric, 3.5, 79 for water, and 4.6 for wastewater. Available after debt service for COB and PUB use are 23 million, 139, 426 from electric, 1 million, 855 from water, and 3 million, 922 from wastewater, of which 2.6 in cash from electric goes to COB, 1.2 from water, 1.9 from wastewater. The 23 million available to PUB primarily comes from electric, 20.5 million, a little bit from water, 638,000, and 2 million from wastewater. The bottom section shows the contribution to the reserves by each utility. Here again, debt service coverage is very well above the target for electric at 2.45. Water barely meets it at 1.52. We target 1.5, and wastewater sits at 1.85. As I mentioned up front, we are requesting consideration to continue our maintenance pool account at 1.5 million, slight decrease from the 2006 budget of 1.9 million, with 800,000 going to electric, 220,000 to water, and 500,000 to wastewater. Here again to promptly respond to emergency needs during the course of the year. Our sophomore budget was approved on August 28 at a level of $4,371,484, which covers two components: the O&M at 2.4 million and debt service at 1.9. PUB's share is $4,061,545. Overall, the increase is attributed to operating plant operating needs, chemicals, maintenance, 480,000. Overall, it's a 12% budget increase of 482,000. PUB's O&M budget, excluding wages, benefits, and fuel, totals to $23,975,000. This is a 1.6 million variance from our amended budget of $22,278,745. This summary is formatted presented by major division. Under the Communications and Administrative Services Division, we are experiencing increases in insurance, significant increase in insurance. We're also situating the 250,000 in conservation programs in this area. Increases in safety materials, footwear, and some shots such as hepatitis are driving a lot of these the $1 million increase as well. On the customer service, we are anticipating an increase in postage requirements. As you all know, the postage went up a while back, several months back, and we are experiencing increases in postage requirements and licensing fees as we continue to fully utilize some of the software packages that are used by not just the customer service folks, but engineers, and for our GIS, we have to maintain licenses, so we're seeing increases in license fees, as well as the need for other services, external services, for just daily stuff such as Social Security verifications, programs we subscribe to be able to manage the day-to-day operations. In the environmental section, we expect to see increases in federal, state, and local permitting or fees. Here increases as well for maintenance of softwares, some consulting fees that will be needed to do some environmental testing or some external testing to support our daily operations. The other big increase is the water and wastewater, 1.2 million. This piece includes, as I mentioned, the southmost. So southmost is experiencing a need for additional chemicals and maintenance type expenses. But we're also looking at increases in like sand, caliche, chemicals, hardware, hauling services, spotting and locating services, and patching services, daily operational requirements that we contract out. Overall, without the southmost requirement of $448,000, we're looking at a $1.2 million variance between our 2006 amended budget of 18.6 and our proposed budget of 19.9. This is the O&M section. I'm going to go into the CIP, and then we'll touch on the different agenda items. Our CIP in its entirety for 2007 has been proposed to a level of $56,036,392. We're presenting the budget here in the four basic components. Electric, which has projects requiring funding for $29,738,792, or 53% of the $56 million. Water projects totaling $8.2 million. Wastewater projects totaling $13,932,000. And then we have some general projects. This is where we capture vehicles, equipment, facility, maintenance type, or capital type upgrades, totaling $4,162,000. I'll make a note here that the water and wastewater exclude the 2007 portion of the impact fee project requirements of $138 million. We've taken out the 2007 piece, which totaled $8.5 million. So what the $13 million and the $8.2 million for wastewater and water represent is non-capacity related and routine rehabilitation type projects, maintenance, not maintenance, but rehabilitation and upgrades.
Does this include any new hookups at all to the north?
We provide for some connection charges, but they're not part of the new development. I mean, they're
already.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, additional, not
No new stuff.
no new stuff.
We've handed out I think it's a 15-page, a 12-page listing of projects
Yeah,
that are broken down by utility. If y'all have any questions on the components of, there are two pieces to the 56 million, and that includes 20 million in carryover projects which are funded at this time from the current year, and then 35 million in new projects for 07, of which, when you consider both, the funding source consists of, starting from the top right, carryover improvement funds of 8.4 million. We're requesting the use of some surplus monies from 05 as well, prior year improvement surplus of 2.2 million. Our scheduled CIP funding of 15.1 million. We do have some projects in here that qualify for from prior year collected impact fees of 1.4 million. We're hopefully will utilize the full balance this year of our 2003 construction bonds of 4.3 million. Our project fund includes bond proceeds from our bond issue last August. We had a 20 million new money bond as part of the refunding. We're anticipating carrying over 16.7 million into 07. And then we are projecting, if some of the projects get underway, get designed, and are in need of cash funding during 2007, we would come back to the board and seek authorization to issue about 8 million in new bonds to cover 7.6 in new debt funded projects. With that, in summary, we do have 3 items for your consideration on the agenda today. Number 3 being you're seeking approval of the O&M budget at $191,489,991. Item 4, seeking approval of our CIP plan of $29,738,792 and our general CIP of $4,162,453. And then agenda item number 5, seeking authorization for our water CIP of $8,202,700 and our wastewater CIP of $13,932,447.
Okay, we have to approve the budget before October 1st?
The ideal condition or thing is to have a budget approved so we can have the authorization to begin with, especially in the CIP with projects that are not at issue, at least with the impact fee. But our O&M, definitely we'd like to start day one with an approved budget. And as I mentioned, I already have a conference call scheduled in mid-October with some rating agencies to go over the year-end finances and then the upcoming forward outlook for PUB.
For the purpose of clarification, the mayor said that we had some waste, and I think he clarified it to me, but I want him to clarify it for the record. Mayor, do you have any waste you want to cut here?
What's up to management, Mr. Mullen?
Well, you're the one that made the comment about waste.
No, what I said is that there's anywhere else that needs to be cut, and this is a much bigger question regarding the impact fee issue. So,
For the record, okay, everybody's given the opportunity here to, management can only go by what we approve here. So it's up to this board to approve or disapprove, not just management to say this is what we're going to do, that's it. So if anybody has any comments of where they want to cut, this is the time to do it.
Leandro, Mr. Chairman, since we're talking about the budget here, something alarming came up in the paper about that Taylor aircraft out there at the airport, not paying the utility bill. Can you enlighten us a little bit on that?
I think we have collected, Betty, go ahead.
We did receive payment for that portion of what was outstanding from Taylor Aircraft.
Could you repeat that at the mic?
Yes, we did receive payment for what was outstanding from Taylor Aircraft.
From who? From who, sir?
From the city of Brownsville for $31,847.08.
Why didn't Taylor pay for it?
The way the lease works is the city is to collect from Taylor Craft for lease and utilities and then turn around and reimburse PUB. So we did receive payment for their portion of what was outstanding.
Is that part of the $3,628,000 that's in free electricity and services to the city of Brownsville?
No.
It's just, so is Taylor going to pay back the city?
That's an issue between Taylor Craft and the city.
Mayor? Well, I'd like to know if they're going to pay the city.
my understanding is that they did pay.
Well, are they going to pay the city?
I don't know, Bob.
It's something maybe you ought to look into, Mayor. I think it'd be good. Did they pay the 10% late fee?
This is what was outstanding to PUB for services for the building that's being occupied by Taylor Craft.
But since all other businesses pay a late fee, did they pay that?
Whatever was due, and that includes late fees or whatever is due from Taylor Craft.
Oh, it just sounds kind of bizarre that the city would cover it. But go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, if I may. We did the cost of living raise, which was 6% or 4%?
Cost of living was a multi-tier, 3-tier,
Yeah,
with 7%
7%?
to the 80% of the
And then we did
workforce.
the pay scale 12%?
We did an upward movement to minimum for a few employees, for quite a few employees, that ended up equating to about $125,000 this year.
And we've done very good. I want to commend management and you and the staff and all the employees. And I know that they were long overdue and deserved it. And I think some hadn't had a raise in 4 years. Okay, so everybody has benefit from us working together. And please don't. I hope the employees don't take it the wrong way what I'm about to propose, because there's a lot of uncertainties right now. We're going through a lot of changes. Okay. The impact fees being one of the issues, and other things that may affect the PUB budget adversely, depending on what we do here as a board. I would like to wait on the merit pay till next year. I would like to put that on hold, which is because we already did the 4% and the 12%, or the 6% and 12%. I would like to approve the budget as being proposed, taking out the capital improvements projects for new developments, which you already did, okay, which was 8 million something, okay, and take out the merit pay for this year.
So on agenda item number 3, you're approving a reduction of $532,707, and that will fall into one of the reserves or buckets.
Yes.
Unused for 2007, and that's what you're approving for number 3. I mean, for the motion.
That's what he's recommending, right?
Yeah,
The motion again. Right, and then we'll get to the CIP on 4 and 5.
How about on the proposed reorganization that you were going to bring us?
Yeah, we're working on that now with the new management structure.
Is that going to affect the budget anyway?
Hopefully it does, sure.
So,
one of the things we talked about here is cutting maybe some waste somewhere.
Yeah, and again, that would be towards our operating budget, to maintain that or reduce that. That really has no bearing on capital improvements. That's all our operating budget.
One thing I'd like to clarify is that the merit that's included in here has an effective date of January 1st, 2007. If it's excluded, we could come back and if all the issues are resolved and conditions are good,
Then,
we could probably come back for an amendment and do an immediate implementation, or as you suggested, wait until 2008. But if we can keep it open, we still have a quarter to work out details if you desire to bring back in.
okay, this is the time to look at the budget and say what each board member considers that they would like to include or exclude. So based on what I've seen here in your presentation, that's the only item I have that I would like for the board to consider.
anybody else?
I make the motion to approve the budget as proposed, less the merit pay of $532,707, which would go into a surplus fund.
Yeah.
And we'll review this proposal at a later date.
I have a motion by Mr. Ahmad, do I have a second?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm for the motion.
Okay, motion passes.
We can always come back. I want the employees to understand we're trying to look out for your interests at the same time. Because if you're doing good, great, we can give you more. We've done it, we showed you that we can do it, and we will do it if the things that take place don't adversely affect us to where it puts us in a bind. That's all.
Okay. The next 2 items are the 2 separate CIP, agenda item 4 and agenda item 5.
We have to take one at a time. Okay, do I have a motion for item number 4?
I make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Varela, all those in favor? Aye. All those against? Motion passes. All right, do I have a motion for item number 5?
Just with a clear understanding that those capital improvements for new developments be taken out, I make the motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ahmad.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand.
The motion was to approve it with the understanding that capital improvements of new development be taken out.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, they are.
The way it is right now.
Yeah.
I second the motion.
Second by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Sanchez, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against, motion passes. Move on to item number 6. Consideration and approval of resolution by Board of Trustees of the City of Brownsville, Texas PUB Board relating to its annual review of board investment policy and investment strategies as required by the provisions of Chapter 2256 as amended Texas Government Code, approving the board's investment policy, investment strategies, and other matters in connection therewith. This is Nora Cavazos.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Nora Cavazos, the investment officer for Brownsville PUB. The Public Funds Investment Act requires an annual review of the investment policy. The current investment policy is attached to your agenda item in Exhibit A. The PUB Bond Council reviewed the current investment policy and recommended 2 revisions as noted in the revised investment policy in Exhibit B. The first recommendation is to include a provision in the bidding process, and the other recommendation is to include a provision of what sources are being used to obtain the month-end market prices. Early this year, the Government Treasure Organization of Texas awarded PUB a certificate of distinction recognizing a well-written investment policy and meeting the requirements of the Public Fund Investment Act. In order to meet all the full requirements, these two provisions are needed in the investment policy. At this time, PUB staff recommends approval of the resolution amending the PUB investment policy.
Do I have questions? If not, do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Real, second. Second by Mr. Ahmad. All those in favor? All those against? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dawes. Item number 7, discussion and action to adopt the Brownsville PUB mission statement stating that the citizens of Brownsville have invested in a municipally owned utility company and have entrusted the board to provide efficient electric, water, and wastewater utilities at the lowest rate possible. Mr. Ahmad.
I think we need a clear mission statement that the citizens of Brownsville can relate to and the board can follow, because this is a municipal utility company and the investors are the citizens of Brownsville. And I think they have entrusted us with the duty to provide efficient utility services, the least cost possible for water, wastewater, and electricity. So I propose this motion. That way we know where we stand, that we are going to be, that is our charge, and that's what we're going to be working at to avoid past mistakes. I think the board can ask itself each time it makes a decision, are we in compliance with this mission? Why we're here to serve the public, to provide efficient, the least lowest rate possible. In the past, that has not been done. People have become aware that PUB, in the main instances, was much higher than other utility companies. And the water, wastewater, PUB is much higher than the valley in comparable systems as PUB. And I think if people back then had realized that perhaps they're not adhering to something like this, it would cause them to reflect that, hey, first, we're here to serve the public-owned system, and they deserve that we protect their interests by keeping the rates down and giving them the best efficient service.
Is that your motion, Mr. Ahmad?
Oh, that's my statement. I need a motion to, if everybody agrees, somebody may disagree. If somebody wants
Does anybody have anything else to add to Mr. Ahmad's statement?
Could I make one comment? And
Yes, John.
I don't have a problem with it. I just, from a wording standpoint, I want to make sure that it doesn't do anything violate our bond indenture or anything like that, just so legal can review it and make sure it's okay. I don't have a problem. I don't think John or Guar will get a chance to review it.
John, do you have any problem with this as it's worded?
I was out of the room, I'm sorry.
On item 7.
Right.
The problem is there's no language, Mr. Ahmad, there's no wording other than your comment. I mean, there's nothing for us to...
The wording says stating that the citizens of Brownsville have invested in a municipal utility company and have entrusted the board to provide efficient electric, water, and wastewater utilities at the lowest rate possible. That's okay. That's okay?
That's okay.
I make the motion to adopt that as a mission statement.
All right, I have a motion by
Doug, where is it?
Discussion. I don't think anybody argues with the fact that the price has to be, at the lowest price. But I know that, we've gotten some reports back, some management reports that recommend strategic meetings, and strategic meetings and state strategies, objectives, action plans. And then once we digest all that information, I think that we can all contribute to a mission statement that encompasses not just this, but a lot of other things that we want to do. Not that I have a problem with this wording, I just, myself would like to, because mission statements are very specific and easy to understand, just like this one is, but they also have to cover a broad range of things in the simplest terms. So I just kind of like to go through that strategic process, and then as a result of that, come up with this, with the mission statement that will incorporate issues about the lowest rate and efficient, reliable service, and some of the other organizational things that we want to become. Customer service is very important as well. I think it should be, our mission to provide great customer service, and sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. So I would, on this one.
So you are in agreement,
No, he's not agreeing.
I'm just saying is I'd like to go through that strategic process to look at all the other things so that we can come up with an expanded mission statement that does incorporate other things and obviously the issue with the rate.
that's what I was saying. So it's not like that you're not disagreeing with it, you just want to go ahead and incorporate more.
Exactly.
Let me see if I can make it easier then. Let me propose this motion, which can be amended once the strategic plan is done, to be worded differently if y'all want to, but this is clear cut. It identifies that the citizens of Brownsville own this utility company. It's clear cut that our mission is to be efficient, and it's clear cut that we're to produce at the lowest rate possible. That's what the investors expect. That's what any investor of any company would expect. The citizens of Brownsville are the owners of this utility company. So let me make the motion to restate the motion, whether it dies or it doesn't, that's up to the board. But let me make the motion that this will be our mission statement, but that it can be changed with different wording once the strategic plan comes back. But I think we need to be very clear, because in the past, I think we've gotten away from serving the public. And it has cost the public. It has cost the citizens of Brownsville more than what it should be costing. So I'm going to make the motion again with the intent that this is a mission statement to be adopted that can be changed as wording the board wants to adopt. So I will make the motion again.
Can I get some clarification? Can I get some clarification?
Sure.
As I mentioned, I'm going to be working with rating agencies in here, and I just want to make sure that when I communicate the adoption of this mission statement, is that it's not perceived as an unwillingness to raise rates. Because of course, they look at the revenue stream and debt service coverage requirements, and although we're providing the lowest rate possible, just want to make sure that it will continue the way we operate to lend the comfort level for the rating agencies that we, if we need PUB, will raise rates to satisfy bond covenants. And that's the only concern I want to make sure we're clear on.
The lowest rate possible does not fix that you have to be the lowest rate.
That's a clarification I need, that we will.
First of all, we may buy electricity, we may buy energy at a higher cost. Because of the market conditions, it will be higher this month compared to the other who already has a contract for 5 years or 3 years or whatever, and they can provide a little cheaper. That's understandable, which says right here, the lowest rate possible.
That's good.
The intent here is for the board to reflect in its decision making. Are we doing this in compliance with being efficient and providing at the lowest rate possible to the citizens of Brownsville? That's very clear, I think.
And you know, I'd like to see that too. And if somebody like Commissioner Atkinson here would allow us to put the mission statement to hang in the city chambers like it is here, it would be beneficial to the citizens of Brownsville, because then the commissioners could read it, because they're usually the ones that end up voting on the rates. Would you have a problem with that, Commissioner Atkinson? Then I second the motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Ahmada, second by Mr. Sanchez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
How many, raise your hands, how many nays? Two. Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All
We
right.
can always come back and change it if you don't.
We're all number 8. Presentation on impact fees. Not a long one, Mr. Rumpel?
You're doing the presentation, not me. I'm just telling you.
Chairman, members of the board, we've made a presentation to the city. We've made a public hearing on impact fees. And we haven't shown that in detail to the board, and we wanted to go through that tonight. I guess, Mayor, we're going to reconvene the hearing next week. And we just wanted the board to see this, and so you're all aware of what we presented. I know it's been on TV shown, but we'll try to move. We won't spend as much time as we did it there, but we wanted to go through it. We reduced it somewhat.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have a complete set of all of the presentations that were used. We're actually going to do not the entire thing, we're just going to do 2 of them. The first one is a generalization, and it covers some of the things that were in the land use assumption and the CIP. And then the latter one is the financial impact of where we are with the impact fees and whatever considerations we might be done. Presentation agenda is what are impact fees and how are they used? How are impact fees determined and what are their costs? And what can we do to change the impact fees? Impact fees out of 395, which is the statute that governs impact fees, reads, a charge or assessment imposed by a political subdivision against new development in order to generate revenue for funding or recouping the cost of capital improvements or facility expansions necessitated by and attributable to the new development. How are impact fees used? Impact fees are one-time payments used to construct system-wide infrastructure to accommodate new development, can only be used for capital expenditures, and pay for new growth's fair share of capital facility needs. The goals and objectives of an impact fee structure are to fund major system expansion caused by growth, reduce future debt obligations and rate pressure on existing customers, and have new development pay its own way. How does PUB use impact fees? PUB currently uses impact fees to help pay for water and wastewater facilities necessary to meet the demands of new development. Again, impact fees are only applicable to water and wastewater facilities. How are impact fees determined? This is a very quick version. In accordance with the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 395, one of the first components is the governing body, in this case it's the City Commission, appoints a Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, of which not less than 40% of the committee membership must be representatives of the real estate, development, or public or building industries. In the case of the work that was done by the CAIAC, the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, they held a series of 9 public hearings before concluding their work. A land use assumption plan is developed in order to determine the system capacity requirements for new growth. A capital improvements plan is developed that identifies the improvements needed to serve new development. Both of these are used to determine what the maximum allowable charge is for determining the equivalent service unit for water system projects and for wastewater system projects. And lastly, the governing body, in this case the City Commission, will hold public hearings and deliberate on what the impact fee amount will be. The current impact fees, what are they? In 1990, a study was conducted to determine the amount of impact fee that could be charged per equivalent service unit for water and wastewater system facilities. The charge in 1990 for ESU for water projects was $1,297. The impact fee was set at $110. In 1990, the maximum allowable charge per equivalent service unit for wastewater projects was at $836. The impact fee was set at $170. What has PUB done to review the... Yes, sir.
Eduardo, in 1990, they did that study?
Yes, sir.
Who was on the City Commission who didn't accept that?
I have no idea.
Does anybody in the room know?
For the record, it was alleged that I was on the City Commission. I had the study right there, and John can tell you.
Could you do it on the mic?
For the record, it was alleged that I was on the City Commission at the time, and John can verify this. The study was done in April 1990. This was decided before I even was elected, so it had nothing to do with it. And for the record, while I was on the City Commission, we had no rate increases during, from 1990 to 1994. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, there was no rate increases.
But Pat, maybe your memory is better than some of ours here on that. Who was on the commission that made the decision on those impact fees? Would you know more or less?
I'd have to go back and look at them, but
I don't know.
Okay.
I guess the only way for me to respond is to tell you that Mr. O'Malley was not on the City Commission.
yeah, I was not on the City Commission. There you go.
Has PUB done a study to review and update the impact fee? Yes, in April of this year, PUB hired a professional engineering firm, Black & Veatch, to do a water and wastewater system impact fee study. What was included in the updated study? The study contains a land use assumption plan with a 5-year growth projection, a 5-year capital improvement plan. The plan identifies projects necessary to meet growth and eligible for income fee recovery. Again, you've gone over your budget. The entire CIP is $138 million. That portion that's attributable to impact fees is roughly $84.6 million. And both the land use assumption as well as the capital improvement plan were used to update the calculation for the maximum allowable impact fee for both water and wastewater system projects. The study determined that the 5-year planning horizon was going to have a total of 14,778 equivalent service units added to the water system and 13,672 equivalent service units added to the wastewater system. A total of $84.6 million in capital in projects that were capacity related is included in the CIP out of a total of $138 million capital improvement plan. For the impact fee purposes, capacity is identified by projects totaling $30.3 million in water improvements and $54.3 million in wastewater improvements. The capital improvement plan were projects that were for reliability, capacity, and maintenance. Those projects are not, while they're included in the entire plan, those for reliability and maintenance are not part of the impact fee or the CIP for impact fee projects. Some of the material that was used to develop this was Turner, Colley, and Brayton conducted a 2002 water and wastewater master plan, and the projects were reviewed by PUB staff and by Black & Veatch for eligibility for income as impact fee recovery projects. The Turner, Colley, and Brayton report included recommendations for new pumping stations for additional sewer flows generated by new connections. It also included transmission distribution lines for both water and wastewater system to maintain pressure and flow capacities. And the 2002 plan recommended water and wastewater plant expansion. The PUB engineering department calculates the flows and pressure for each new development. Help identify and prioritize capital projects based on priority growth areas and funds availability. And the CIP is reviewed every 6 months. How does the current study compare with the 1990 study? The maximum allowable charge for equivalent service unit for the current study in the water is $1,336 per equivalent service unit and $1,754 equivalent service unit for wastewater projects. And you can see the comparisons between the 1990 maximum allowable and the current study, 2006. In water, there's a $39 difference in the maximum allowable, and in wastewater, there's a $918 difference. Why does PUB recommend the city raise impact fees? It's in order to generate capital dollars to fund major system expansion caused by new growth, reduce rate pressure on existing customers by reducing future debt obligations, and have new development pay its own way. The Capital Improvements Advisory Committee concluded its meetings, and they forwarded recommendations in April, the 27th of April, I believe, to the City Commission that included that the City Commission adopt the land use assumption plan after public hearing, that the City Commission adopt the capital improvement plan after public hearing, and while the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee agrees with the calculations of the maximum allowable impact fees for water and wastewater system projects, it did not recommend what that fee should be. That concludes this portion of the presentation.
Let me just say that on when we had the public hearing on impact fees at the city, Mr. Ernie Hernandez had a good point that he was Commissioner Hernandez, I'm sorry. He had a good point regarding the small businesses and how they would be affected by the bigger ESUs. He made mention of some tortillerias or small business that have a bigger, like a 2-inch line that was going to generate other ESUs. But I think that's something that the city can also look at, because part of the reason they need that 2-inch line is because of the new regulated, the new ordinance about the sprinklers, the fire sprinklers. And I mean, just the sprinklers itself is a burden.
Because if you're gonna build a duplex or a fourplex, you need to put in a $18,000 sprinkler system, just the system. Plus, you're gonna, and that, because of that, you're gonna need the 2-inch line to feed that. So, that's just something that you guys can look at if you are, you know, to take the burden off that small business. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this just concludes the general presentation, and then Mr. Leandro Garcia will follow up on the financial analysis of the presentation.
Well, first, let me point out something very quick. Go back to the chart on, do you have any chart on page 7?
Yes, we'll be covering them
the
on
next part of the presentation.
Go ahead.
So with that, let me
Okay, I'm going to be discussing a top-level view of the financial picture regarding the funding requirements for capacity and non-capacity projects. This first slide, we're trying to assess the rate impact on the water and wastewater utilities. The first 4 rows provide the results of assessing or analyzing rate increases for 4 scenarios. One at the maximum allowable impact fee, which would require rate increase in 2009 of 0.77% for water and 2.58 for wastewater. Under the second scenario, with setting the impact fee at 50% of the maximum allowable, would increase our rate requirement in 09 to 3.53 for water and 6.78 for wastewater. We also had a proposal to increase our impact fee, which is currently at 280, 110 for water and 170 for wastewater. Increasing it to 200 for water and 350 for wastewater, combined at 550. This would result in a potential rate increase in 2008 of 0.85%, and then increases in 09 of 4.61 and 9.27 for water and wastewater respectively. Scenario 4 provides the rate impact from not increasing the fees and leaving them at the current level of 110 for water and 170 for wastewater. We would estimate a rate increase in 2008 of 1.06, with slightly higher increases in 2009, 4.77 for water and 10.12 for wastewater. The bottom 4 rows provide some dollar requirements to fund the operating and debt service requirements based on the rate increases needed.
But this is on top of the 214% that has already been increased, passed on to the rate payers.
One of the slides will show a historical trend on rate increases dating back to 1990.
214%.
Approximately. We have 4 slides here that show the 4 scenarios. The first 4 include the 3 components of the plan that Mr. Campirano alluded to or talked about. A total plan of $138 million was looked at and accepted as part of the impact fee study. We have currently funding for $25 million of that, of the 138. So any new funding requirement would go to fund the balance of $113,563,995 in projects. Of that $113 million, $28,939,995 is non-capacity related. So we would be looking at funding these projects with debt. Since they are non-capacity, we would, regardless of the impact fee level, we would proceed or seek authorization to proceed with these projects, non-capacity related. On the capacity related, the $84 million that Mr. Campirano talked about, we have 2 pieces that we need to fund. We are projecting, based on the ESUs and the fees at the maximum allowable of 3,090 to generate $37,444,666 in impact fee revenues through 2010, which is the time frame for these projects for the plan. The balance of the $84 million after we fund 37 million with impact fee monies, would require debt funding of 47,179,000, which would be, the debt service would be satisfied with base rate revenues. So here we have the total 113 million, 42% from base rate debt funded with base revenues, 37 million from impact fee, and we already, and we would need new debt for the 28 million in non-capacity.
Leandro, just for the purpose of clarification, because Charlie, the city manager mentioned to me, and to me it's obviously clear, but apparently it wasn't to him, that perhaps the public doesn't fully understand that they're still having to pay a portion, and we've never said they don't have to pay a portion. What the proposal is by the experts, in order to keep rates down, the portion attributed to developers would be 33%, and the portion that would be carried on by the ratepayers would be the 25 plus the 42%. So they're still carrying a major share of the cost for the capital improvements. But in order to help the ratepayer, we're asking the developers to pay a minor share of 33% of the overall cost. Is that right?
That is a good clarification, yes. Based on the formula to arrive at the maximum allowable, the formula does include consideration.
It's based on 3,090.
Right.
And this is not them covering any debt service or anything like that.
The 3,090 is not intended to cover 100% of the capacity-related projects. It's formula-driven, and that's the maximum we could calculate. These next slides take the other alternative scenarios of 50% of maximum allowable.
Let me clarify something for you. It's not the maximum we can, it's the maximum recommended.
Correct.
Because the maximum we can would be approximately 6,180 if you include debt service.
Right. Considering the acceptable components per 395, right. Yes, that we did forego consideration of interest.
Exactly.
Based on the 50% of maximum allowable, revenues to be generated from impact fees are estimated at 18.7 million, which will require 65.9 million in debt funding for the capacity-related projects, totaling that 84 million. At an 18% level, or $550 combined impact fee, we could generate 6.6 million, leaving a balance of 77.9 million of the 84 million required to be funded with debt. If the impact fee is left at its current level of the combined 280, we could potentially generate 3.3 million for 2010 and fund the balance of 81.2 million from using bond proceeds, using debt.
Okay, so now, what you're saying here, if the city commission does nothing, then the burden is going to be 72% plus 25% on the ratepayers. And 3% will be on the developers as compared to 16%.
If no adjustments are made to the plan.
No, it's compared to 33%.
Correct.
33%.
That's correct. If no adjustments are made to the plan and it remains intact at 84 million, then the share in the cost is 81 million to fund it with base rates to satisfy debt requirements, and 3.3 million from impact fees. That's correct.
And if they accept 50%, again, the developers only pay 16% of the total cost.
Correct. And here again, a big if we keep the plan intact.
Yeah, right.
These next four slides.
Hold on, man. So if that plan of the 84 million were to be reduced, or to be amended or changed, that would affect all these numbers, wouldn't it?
It would affect the share. We could still have the fee at whatever level, maximum 50, but it would drive the need for debt, for new debt, to fund the capacity related.
But it's also going to affect the land use. Like for instance, España bought some land over there by Rancho Viejo. We may not be able to service that, so we're going to have to tell them, look, you're out of the scope of providing services based on what we're funding here. So you will not be able to hook up, or any new subdivisions that are not within the area that we can provide services.
That's correct. The selection criteria for the projects definitely would be challenging.
I think that land is out of our water district, isn't it? I thought it was East Ohio Water District, I think. Yeah, but there will be some subdivisions that are new that will be.
The next four slides take into consideration, as Mr. Chamala mentioned, there is interest associated with issuing debt. And in this first slide, over a 25-year period, we're adding another piece of the pie, which is the estimated interest debt over 25 years of $42.2 million. So this increases the 113 to 155 million as a total expense requirement. Not necessarily the same time period, but down the road, nonetheless, a burden to ratepayers. If we issue 47 million, then it does carry a 42 million interest price tag. So this shifts the percentage somewhat to where the 37 million generated through impact fees is now 24%, with the debt funding and the interest totaling to 57%.
So, in all reality, if the city commission adopts the 3,090 impact fee with the debt service issue, the developers are only going to be required to pay approximately 24%, and the rest, 76%, will be carried by the ratepayers, and this will help us keep the rates down and allow us to meet the future growth based on the land use, to where we're not stagnating growth, we're not killing growth.
That's correct. I just want to make sure I clarify that the 42.2 million nonetheless would be over a 25-year period, whereas the 37 million is estimated based on ESUs, I'm sorry.
ESUs.
Ramping up, through 2010. So.
Over 4 years.
4 years.
So, all right.
No, but I think it needs clarification.
Once we issue debt, unless we refund it or do something, we'll carry it for 25 years.
But what we need to, I think what the mayor needs, or maybe I need clarification, is that, yes, we're going to be issuing the debt for 25 years because we don't have the capacity to recoup the cost